So you want to buy a house in Japan? Well, I'm hoping to take you on this journey with me because I want to buy one as well. And I want to give you a bit of background about why I want to buy a house in Japan. The abandoned houses in Japan are called Akiya. And there's a whole pile of reasons why they are so cheap. And you'll be seeing lots of news stories about them over the coming months and years. And they're only going to increase in numbers because of the demographics in Japan and the number of people who are dying and basically leaving behind houses that the family doesn't really know what to do with. So this journey started when, well, for a few reasons really. One, I've had a love affair with Japan for many, many years. It all started probably with this man. This is Koichi Ose. He played the part of the samurai in a very iconic TV program, The Samurai, in the 1960s. It was very successful, and Koichi Ose is still alive today and runs restaurants in Tokyo. And he had a great influence on people in Australia who developed a love affair with Japan. And when he visited in the 1960s, a couple of times, he was mobbed at the airport and 3,000 people turned up for his shows at the various town halls. But probably the biggest trigger has been recently, where a friend of mine sat down with me and said, "You know, you're always busy." And it was true. And I was thinking, why am I always busy? It's kind of crazy. And I look around at most of my friends and they're busy too. And I thought, we weren't always this busy. It just doesn't make sense to me. Along with that, my work was driving me crazy, and I'd been doing it for 20 years. And even though it paid well and allowed me to do a lot of things, like go to Antarctica, and I bought a small plane, took up flying, I never enjoyed it, never enjoyed the work. And I decided it was time to get out. And the trigger for that was that my best friend, Maro, who I had grown up with, gone to primary school with, and had known him for, 55 years, I suppose. He died of stomach cancer just recently. And it got me thinking. I thought, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so it's time to really start enjoying my life. And so I decided that I wanted to live in Japan because I had this love affair with it for so long. And it just so happens that my wife is Japanese, which makes life a little bit easier in Japan. I'm in Australia at the moment, and I am planning on moving there in the next 5 weeks. We just did a trip a couple of months back for a month looking for a house to buy. And as you know, you've seen all these stories that these houses go from, say, $5,000 or $10,000 up to, say, $100,000. And that's a hell of a lot cheaper than anything in Australia or America or most of the Western world, really. And over the coming months, I'm going to explain why that is. And I'm going to take you on this trip with me so that you too can possibly one day get yourself a house in Japan. There's no restrictions on buying a house in Japan by a foreigner. Some countries have that kind of restriction, but not Japan. So stick with me, and I'll show you all the ins and outs of getting a house, and there are a lot. It can be an easy process, especially if you use a broker in Japan who speaks English and Japanese, and there are Westerners who are taking that role up now to make the job a lot easier. You can get very cheap houses in Japan if you want to go into the country. If you want to live in the city, you're going to probably pay more, but not always. Sometimes they're quite cheap as well. And you've got to watch out for how much it's going to cost you to do them up. So I'll be giving you various connections and places you can go and people you can meet to discuss your plans for an Akiya. But you also have to realize that it's not easy to actually live in Japan. Number one, the language is an issue if you don't speak Japanese. And secondly, you can't just go and live in Japan. They do make it difficult for foreigners to live permanently in Japan. the best you might do is to spend 3 to 6 months in Japan each year and the rest of the time in your home country. That might work for you. It might not. But if you want to live there permanently, you're going to have to apply for permanent residency, and that's an involved process and not easy to get. So we'll look into all that down the track, and in the meantime, you'll learn a little about Japanese history and the experiences that my wife and I have as we travel around Japan looking for an Akiya. And the first place that I chose to look for the Akiya was Izu Peninsula, which is not far, well, not that far from Tokyo. At its closest, it's probably about an hour and a half. At its longest distance, it's probably about 3 to 4 hours away from Tokyo, which is a bit of a hike, although the train services are good. Now, the one reason that I did forget to mention about why I wanted an Akiya was for my daughter. I wanted to leave something behind for her. I have the cash to buy an Akiya, but I don't have the cash to buy a house in Australia because it's just gone crazy here. The median house price in Brisbane, I think, is about 850,000 Australian dollars. In Sydney, it's about 1.2 million. And you're not getting much for the money. So in Japan, my price range is about $30,000 to $50,000. Which I think is relatively affordable. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to go for an Akiya, which is an abandoned house. There are second-hand homes that are for sale as well that aren't abandoned, and they are in that range, $30,000 to $100,000. If you want super cheap, yes, you can get it, but it will probably come with a whole host of issues and maintenance problems, etc. Anyway, it's going to be a fun journey, so come along with me and my wife, and let's enjoy Japan together because it's a great place. I love it. See you in the next one.